What's up, everyone? So here we're on our YouTube live. We're going to be working with our doll head here. So working with this, the first thing that you can see is the sectioning that we've taken from here. So we started off from the parietal ridge, right? Just taking off just a little bit higher up. So I looked at the front line.
Just a little bit higher up, so I looked at the
So
front line.
from this, what I start to look at is the curvature of the head, right? So I go from that recession, I start creating a line, and this goes all the way around, right? Crossing through that crown area. On the doll head, it's a little bit different than if it was on a human. On a human, I'd probably go a little bit lower, but it also depends on the head shape that I'm working with. So for this particular head shape, I'm safe leaving this top off, taking this all the way around, if you notice, to the opposite side. Now, some of the things that I do, right, when I'm working with a guest is, number one is always going to be guest preference. So when I'm working with the guest that comes into my chair, they show me a picture, and they say, this is the haircut that I'm looking for. Before I start creating this disconnection, once I lift this up, the first thing that I look at is I want to see the weight, right? So I look in the mirror, and I start to check if this is ideal, because if this goes a little bit lower, what's going to happen if this hair goes up is this is going to lay always down. If I take this too far up, what starts to happen is now this hair that is from the top becomes part of the side, so it starts sticking out. So one of the things that I always analyze is the texture of the hair. So I want to see if that hair is fine, medium, coarse, because a lot of times that's going to dictate how that hair is going to start to lift up, right? Sometimes I might even have hair that's finer, but that hair tends to be a little bit more almost like a wire that when you cut it, it springs up. So that is going to help me determine how short I can cut the hair. I think one of the most common pictures, right, that people would always bring, I don't know if you guys have been doing hair for a while. I remember when pompadours were like big and in, everyone would come in. I get every guest that would come in, they come in with a picture like, I want this. And it was a picture of David Beckham. And the next client would come in, hey, you know what? I want a haircut. What haircut do you want? I want this, David Beckham. And I'm like, oh my God, everyone. Right? So everyone wanted to look like that, including myself. But one of the things that we had to start to realize was that haircut didn't fit everyone. Right? So I started seeing a lot of strong disconnections where people were shaving this off, leaving the top. Right? So you got to be very cautious on how much you take off from the sides and how much we leave through that. Here in the back, you're going to see that I have some heads drawn. These heads, I'm going to start filling them in as I start to work with them. So some of the things that I want to take you guys is through some exercises. So one of the first things is when I'm grabbing a scissor, I want to make sure that my finger isn't all the way in, right? So you guys could see here, my finger's not all the way in. So one of the things is look at my thumb. You see how it's far out? So what I want to do is open that scissor and then close. So open that scissor so my thumb stays all the way out. So if you see it like this, right, my thumb, look at it, I'm going to put it like this, comes out and then it bends as it closes. So this is going to help me a lot of times, right, with my scissor over comb. So the first thing I want to practice is just open and closing and maintaining that still blade. Right? Second thing is going to be the control of my comb. So once I have a comb in my hand, there's two different types of grips that I have with the comb. One of them is going to be a little bit more like this. And this is going to help me a lot of times when I want to move away from the head shape. So whenever I'm cutting hair, right, and I want to start to move away from the head shape, this is the comb. This is my hand position that I use. Once I've got the hair very short and I know that I don't have to recomb down, right? So again, this one is great for when I cut up, I could comb back down for control. So the flipping of this is what I practice the most. So right now, a lot of you that are home, you're not cutting any hair, it's a great time just to start practicing this, right? And practicing this, still blade. How to keep that nice and still. Now the other position is when I grab my comb like this, and a lot of times I grab my comb like this, just when I have to scissor over comb, and I don't have to comb back down that hair, right? So I'll use this position. So very important is that these two guys travel and move together as you're cutting hair, right? So this, we're gonna continue to move up that head shape. Now, with this haircut that we'll be working with, if you see I created that slight part all the way through around the head shape, I'm going to be setting myself first a guide horizontally with my fingers, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to scissor over comb. So setting my guide, right, one of the first things I want to do is see if I got a good angle there. It's setting this guide. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to take this section. I'm going to just lower this. I'm going to keep it here. I'm going to take that first section. I'm going to measure out what's going to be the longest length that I need for that top. Once I have that, I'll set in a guide horizontally. So I'll come back here, just place my finger, lift this hair up. I'm also just extending my knuckle in the back. So it's going to be just a little bit longer as I get towards the back. So right now I'm just setting a guide through that top portion area. So again, I'm just going to comb this over. I'm going to grab this. See my guide from my previously cut. And I'm going to work my way all the way around the head shape. Once I get to this area, what I'm going to do is just extend that just a little bit. I could always cut some more. So if you notice, again, just extending that line so it gets a little bit longer towards the back. And then cutting this all the way through. Right? What this is going to help avoid many times is cutting that hair all the way short to that top. So once I get my guide there, I'm going to take a measurement just to make sure. A lot of times I'll just take that, and then I'm going to come here to the opposite side, and I'm going to start in the same manner. Now, why did I go front to back and front to back? The reason is because I'm keeping it a little bit longer towards the back. So it's a little easier for me to go shortest in the front, longest towards the back, working from front to back. So here you see the angle, how my fingers start to work just slightly out. Getting that guide, having a high elevation is going to be very important as I'm cutting this. Moving my way around the head shape. So if you were working at a salon or at a barber shop, right here I'd be walking around my guest. So I comb that hair down. And again, just getting that guide through the top, bringing this out. Also, the hair is dry. So when I scissor over comb, I like scissor over combing over dry hair, just because I have better control of it. So here, just extending that just a little bit out, and you see how it connects through that back area. So now we got to that back, and what you have is a slight little, like almost like a U shape that you got from that. So it helps me get a guide into position. I'm going to start cutting on this right side. It's going to be a little bit easier for me to control. You can start on either side, but sometimes it's best to start on the side that if I'm right-handed on this right side, so that way I could be cutting from short and getting my guide as I continue to cut. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch, right, my scissor. So I'm going to use a longer scissor. It's going to be a lot easier for me to control. Have any questions?
Yeah, please explain triangular sectioning patterns in the crown area.
Oh, once we get to the crown.
Yeah.
When I get to the crown.
And why do you choose horizontal sectioning?
The reason why is because I'm setting just a guide through that top. So I'm just setting a guide through this top portion area, which is going to be my longest piece. Now I'm going to grab my comb in that C shape, and I'm going to have my scissor nice and parallel to that. So once I have my scissor in that position, which is going to be anchored, I'm going to start cutting to meet that guide that I have at that top. So again, let me just lower this a little bit so you guys a little bit easier for you to see. So I'm going to lower this a little bit. You'll notice here, I'll start with my scissor over comb, and I'm establishing that guide, and I'm cutting right to the length that I set at that top. So this bottom, you could cut as short as you want, or as the guest needs. What I'm doing is connecting it to the guide that I already created. So here I have now a very easy guide to follow. Now, why would I choose this over grabbing a clipper? So many times when you grab a clipper and you're using this length, depends on the texture of the hair. When I go in with the clipper and I have a guard, the tendency is that people are going to go up with it. Or because it's this long, you have to come in with the clipper and do this one, right? So you cut and then bring this down. If I do that, I'm going to set a very heavy weight line through this area. So really, to me, it's about customizing, right? Where I have that curvature of the head to create that connection. So for this haircut, I find it best to start off with my scissor over comb for it. So here, working scissor over comb. Now, a little trick that I'm going to show you. So once you're working around the ear, the doll head, it's very easy, right? Because I can still do this. But on a human, this gets in the way. So what I'll do many times is I'll grab my comb this way. So you see, I'll grab my comb like this. And the reason why I'll grab my comb like this is so I could fold the ear down, and then I could still scissor over comb. Right? So I could fold the ear down, and I could still move my hand. So again, this is a great little trick to work yourself around the ears. Also, cutting in this manner, if you see, I cut this panel, and now I have a guide to cut my next panel. So those of you that are following, that are out of school, you know, a great way is to start diagramming, right? If I was diagramming this, I would just have this one panel and then continue moving my way all the way around. So here, look, this is my guide. So all I have to do is open and close that scissor. You don't even have to work very fast to do this. Sometimes I see people, as they're learning, they want to move this very quick. And it's not about moving it quick. It's about having just that steady hand and having good control as you're cutting. You guys start to see what that looks like. Here I'm going to slightly just make sure that I get just a little bit of tilt through that. I'm going to put my body into this position, and I'm going to get my guide from that top, and then I'm going to start to cut. So once I get my guide through this area, you notice also that my comb is extended through the back, so it's leaving it just a little bit longer as I move to that back. I'm also going to start working in a slight diagonal, and this is going to help me maintain some of that length. Then I'll start working through that bottom area. Once I get to this, sometimes if you're right-handed, it becomes a little easy if you come in this position. And I just scissor over comb. Right? So just for that area right around the ear, sometimes that's a little bit harder to reach. I'll go into that. So again, scissor over combing, working my way through those sides. So make sure that you're sharing also that broadcast with your friends. So share the link. The more people that could join, obviously, the more that they could start to benefit. We are also, I believe, on Facebook Live. So on Facebook, if you're on Facebook and you're following me, share the link so other people could start to join and see what is it that we're doing. But so working with my scissor over comb, you can see as I get that guide from my previously cut panel, working my way. Sorry, I have one of my dogs here barking. So working through this area, again, with that scissor over comb, right? You start to see how we're starting to take down that shape. We set a guide through this top area horizontally. I'm going to move, right, that doll head as I continue to work my way around. Opening and close that scissor. Leaving that little bit longer length towards the back area as I continue to cut. Moving my way all the way to that center, right? So as I have this, some of the important things is having, again, that control just with your thumb. I showed you guys just how to achieve that. I think right now, as many of us are at home, it's a great way for us to start to exercise and work our way around it. So through this back, you'll notice as I'm starting to get to the center, right, how it got just a little bit longer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start over on the opposite side, and I'm going to join that through the back. Right? So many ways, just like when you're cutting with the clipper, sometimes you taper one side, right, and you go to the opposite side I'm going to treat this the same exact way just so I can maintain a little bit of that length growing towards the back. So again, grabbing my comb in that C-shaped manner, I'm going to place my comb into this position, have my scissor in, working from that bottom, connecting to the guide that I created at this top. So earlier I set a guide in. If you're just joining us, I set a guide in horizontally through that top portion area, right above the parietal. I'm going to continue to cut, moving upward, right around the ear. I'm just going to slightly anchor my comb, working up into that. Right around this ear, you could also grab your comb like this, like I explained earlier, fold this ear down, and then I could go in and cut that area. So it becomes much easier to be able to fold that ear down, right, and cut. So I'm going to continue working my way all the way around, getting that comb into place, connecting from the bottom all the way to that top, placing my comb in a diagonal position. My scissor also starts to work in the same manner. So however my comb is, my scissor plays that same role. So I'm going to slightly tilt the head in this position. I'm going to start working from that bottom, connecting through what that top is. So I see my guide. See, and once we get to that guide, I continue cutting upward and there's nothing else to cut. So moving my way all the way around. From that bottom. Going all the way to where we set up that guide. I'm almost done. So if you see, it's a very efficient technique. I'll start to refine just a little bit through that bottom area. Working my way towards that top. Anchor. Start to float. So my comb basically serves almost like if it was a guide. So working from that bottom all the way to the established guide that we created. Working my way up. And now you see that we've met that all the way through. So I maintained this length that I had through the back. Even though I'm scissor over combing, it's very important to control the silhouette and the shape of the haircut. So I didn't just go in and whack all this off, right, and make it all exactly the same length. I still work with something that was slightly shortest in the front, right, a little bit short in the front. Look at the length that we have in the back. So it's a significant amount, but I did this by working with my scissor over comb in that diagonal position. I set my guide in first. So here I have enough length to be able to create a support for what the top is going to be. Once I have this, I'll go into like little details. Obviously on a person, it's a little bit easier to work around the hairline. I'll switch my comb to a little bit of that thinner side and just get into these tighter areas, cleaning up around the ear. Getting this all the way through. The same is through this back. Right, I'm going to start cleaning out that hairline. A lot of times I'll slightly freehand just to get it short enough with my scissor over comb. So coming in tight. It's almost just like a little taper. Working through that back area. Again, creating that shorter length at the bottom. Working my way all the way, just slightly above that nape area. Do you have any questions?
In Facebook, Richard McDade says, I found with finer hair, I have harder time with smooth scissor over comb. It shows every little imperfection. What are some tips you have for that?
Oh, yeah. What's up, Richard, first of all? Long time no see. You know, I've encountered the same thing. When you have hair that's very fine, sometimes when you're scissor over combing, what happens is not that the hair is fine, it's density. You have a lot of less density in some areas. So it starts to look almost like it has patches of it. So sometimes when I'm working with that, I prefer either to cut it very short or to slightly graduate the shape and then just taper into it. Because if you leave it about half of an inch or about half of an inch in length, similar to this, you'll start to see the patches. And that's why you start to see almost a little bit of that inconsistency. But it's really sometimes the density.
Do you recommend a long scissor or a short one? For your method.
I think a lot of times scissor, people ask, do I like a long scissor or a short scissor? It depends what I'm working with. When I'm scissor over combing, I like to have a little bit more of a longer scissor. When I'm working inside my hands in graduated shapes, I like having a little bit of more control, so I'll tend to use a smaller scissor for that. So I think it's just like utensils that we use sometimes to eat. You know, sometimes if you're making whatever, a big bowl of rice, let's say, I might have a big spoon to be able to shake that. And sometimes I just want a smaller portion, so I get a smaller scissor. So when I'm cutting smaller portions, I get a small scissor. I'm cutting larger portions, I use a larger scissor, if that helps you get that out. So I've set in, right, that scissor over comb. Now what I'm going to do is I've established this length that I have through the top area, right? So I'm going to take this 1 second, and I'm going to slightly move this, right? And I'm going to go here to the drawing board. So what we did first, right, was establish a line. So establishing this line that I have here, right, I want you guys, let me see how I could best convey this. So if you guys thought I drew these, this is what I used. I'm not very good at drawing, so you got fooled, yeah. So here, right, the first thing that I did was establish this guide. So establishing this, what I did was, I'm gonna go back here, and it was somewhere close to this. Right? And what we did is we cut this guide first. Right? So when you see this, the ideal silhouette of what we did was we cut this guide out here, and then with my scissor over comb, I basically connected that. Right? So this is the silhouette that I have. Now this is going to help me with the top. Right? So this length that I have on the top, this guy is the one that's going to help me to create this length that I have here. Right? So I'm going to take that out. So here I established this guide, and then through this bottom, we went into scissor over comb. So if you're at a beauty school and you guys are drawing this out, I would have guideline that I set through here was set horizontally, and then through here you would have your purple lines that I start to work with, just to show off, right, how I work with that scissor over comb in the haircut. So now, back to my friend. I'm going to place him here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to remove these clips. Right? I'm going to get these clips out of the way. Water. Through this top. So I just want to make sure that I get a good amount of moisture through it. Oh, Also, one of my favorite products to use just to help me detangle with that many times is going to be my tea tree lavender mint. So tea tree lavender mint leave-in conditioning spray. So I'm just going to put a little bit. It's going to help me just comb through that a little bit easier. Much better now. And now I'll switch to a smaller scissor. I'm just going to drop it like it's hot. I gotta cut the top. So Pedro is coming down. I'm going to come through this area. I'm going to comb this hair forward. Right, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate and I'm going to separate that fringe. So I'm going to get this fringe out. I'm going to work through this just with that slight curve. Get this out. Right, then I'm going to comb this slightly back. I'm going to put a little bit of more moisture through it. So I can see his hair start to come backwards. I can see the length. That'll work best. A lot of times, depending on your guest and the density that they have, if they have any receding hairline, it's very important to take that fringe into consideration. I'm going to do this from the front just so I could see. So I'm going to bring him down. Because he has a lot of density, you know, I have tons of options with it. On a person that had a receding hairline, I wouldn't take this. I would do more of a curved section and take a little bit fatter here and then work my way around that. So depending obviously on the density that you have and if there's any receding hairline, always take that into consideration. So I'm just going to isolate this part of the fringe. I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to bring this over. And what I'll do here is I'm going to take a horizontal section. I'm going to get this clean, nice and out of my way. And then I'm going to come in here. I'm going to take my first section. I'm going to use maybe the wider side of my comb. I'm going to lift this up. And I see where I established that bottom guide. So I'm going to go just slightly above that. And then I'm going to cut in my guide. So I'm utilizing, right, that length that I have at the bottom. I could see it through underneath my fingers. And then I use a higher elevation to cut this all the way. So bringing this up, that's why it was so important to establish this length, right? How many times have you ever cut someone's hair and you start cutting this and all of a sudden it starts getting higher and higher up? You start scissor over combing and now you took the curvature away, right? And all of a sudden what happened? High and tight, right? You tell that guest, oh my God, it's gonna last so much longer, right? So that's not the option that I'm looking for here. It doesn't last any longer, let me tell you that. All you're doing is just cutting the hair shorter than what they had. So I want to be able to avoid that. So you see here where I'm getting my guide, it's connected to the hair that I already established from that. So again, elevating through here. So if you're with me, diagramming, right? I'm working with this horizontal section. Here I'm just going to slightly tilt his head a little bit more towards me. I'm going to take my next section. I'm going to comb this hair out. And the reason why I'm tilting is sometimes if you have a guest and let's say they're too tall, this works also great. So you have them tilt their head towards you and this helps you control a little bit more of a higher elevation. So I'm going to bring this out. I can see my guide. So if you notice my elevation is a little bit higher, I'm not all the way down where I started. I set my guide. And then I connect that through that back. Remember, this was a little bit higher up, so it saves me a lot through that back area in the crown. Because I'm using also a lower elevation, right? So people that are asking, if I have a flatter crown, because I use a lower elevation, I'm gonna have a longer length through that flatter crown. So really it's gonna help me create a little bit more of that roundness with that. So through the front, you see here, I'm just gonna bring this back, connect to that guide that I have, And one thing that I always like to do is just comb the hair back and see how it's gonna respond naturally and fall. I like to be able to provide a haircut for my guests that they don't have to struggle too much at home, blow drying it and brushing it. I think the product should be used just to enhance the style, right? So I think one of the most important things with guests is I want them to be able to still have just wash and wear hair per se. So now through this, I'm gonna see if there's any little bits more to cut. So I see I have that guide. So very similar to what I already had on the top. So many times when you're working with a guest, they come in already with a pre-existing haircut. And we're trying to make those adjustments to what's gonna be most suitable for them. So here working with that horizontal section, you see how I've got my guide. Continuing this, I'm gonna add that little piece. Get this all the way through. Cut, and then come back. So now I'm gonna do exactly the same on the opposite side. So I'm gonna rotate him, just for ease of you guys seeing. I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna take my section, I'm gonna bring this down, comb this up and over, bring this in, and I start first with the lower elevation. So just slightly past where I had established that guide, using a higher elevation, bringing this back, working this, taking my next section. It's very easy if you comb the hair in the same direction that you'll be parting the hair. It's one of the easiest ways to be able to control that. So if you notice here, my elevation is gonna get just a little bit higher as I continue to cut. Moving upward. Again, getting that guide. And then moving towards the back as I'm cutting. So you see here where I have that guide. And then I'll make sure that I get this all the way through this back area. And you see how it connects. So now I'm gonna slightly tilt the head towards me. So this is gonna help me control, again, as we explained, that elevation. But look, I'll comb the hair in the same direction that I'll be parting the hair. So that comb is from front to back. Now I could have that section nice and clean. I get the hair out of my way. It's very important to have good control as you're cutting the hair. I'll place my hand in here, get my guide. You guys can see where my guide is. Cut. Elevate this up a little bit higher, bringing this towards the back. You see also as it's slightly extended, so it creates a little bit of a longer back just through that crown area. And then I'm gonna brush this, comb this hair back so I could see how it starts to create that connection. And now I'll have my last section. I'm gonna see just through this top area, that connection all the way through from that bottom panel that we just cut. So we went above the parietal, right? The parietal ridge, those of us that a little bit not familiar to that, is the widest part of the head. So I set my guide, look at that, check that all the way through, bringing this back, and now I have this fringe area. So with the fringe, I have lots of different options with this. I like to keep this sometimes a little bit more disconnected, depending on my guest. What I will do is I'm gonna make sure that I wet this down. I'm gonna dry his face. I'm gonna move this. Right, and now working with this fringe area, I'm gonna bring this back and see just how much I need to disconnect, right, from this area. So really what I want to do is, working with this, I just wanna put a little bit of separation through that. So with this disconnected fringe, I'm also going to take just a little bit of length off from the corner. So it's almost slightly rounding it. So you see just through this area, I want to take that so it doesn't create too much of an overhang. Right, you see that? Where we're at? So we're gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm gonna bring this up. I'll get that guide. You see, and that's a little overhang that we're gonna be cutting. So we just slightly point cutting through that, channeling a little bit through. And now I see where I have established that length. And then I'll cut that. My last little tip is gonna be, I'm gonna utilize a razor. And with this razor, I'm gonna bring his hair down. And I'm gonna just put in just a little bit of separation through this top area, but more through the inside as this hair is gonna be brushed back. So I'm just gonna come in here a little bit vertical. And I'm just poking in little holes just to create a little bit of separation through this. Right, you guys start to see, we start to eliminate some of that bulk and weight. Again, coming through here, taking off that length, just creating a little bit of separation. He does have a lot of density, this doll head. So because he has so much density, it's a little bit easier for me when I'm coming into style. The same would be with the guest, to be able to control that. So once I have this, see the amount of texture that we were able to release from that. I'm gonna wipe him. Just wanna get him nice and clean. You see how he's starting to smile? He's a little bit happy now. What I want to do is, this is one of my favorite products to use when I'm blow drying into hair. So this is gonna be called Grooming Spray. So with Grooming Spray, what I'm gonna do is, this is from Maverick, so it's Paul Mitchell. So it's Maverick by Paul Mitchell. Grooming Spray is gonna help me with volume into the hair. It's one of my favorite products. What I love most about this is, number one is gonna be the fragrance, but most importantly is the amount of volume that it gives me to control the hair, but it doesn't leave it feeling very crunchy or hard. So to me, that's extremely important that I have control, especially when you have a guest that has finer hair. I'm gonna be utilizing my narrow grip. I'm gonna turn this on. I'm gonna have full heat, and I'm gonna go medium on it. So I'm gonna start to blow dry this. I'm gonna bring this a little bit forward, and I'm gonna start working my way through that back area. If you see with the 413 brush that I'm utilizing, brushing this up, I want to use multiple directions, that this is going to help me with a little bit of movement. My focus right now is the base. If you ever heard that song, right? It's all about that bass, all about that bass. So right now it's all about that bass, right? That's how we start to get that volume. So it's all about the bass, all about the bass. Getting that volume in. Utilizing my 413. I'm going to bring this up, right? Focusing more on the base. See how I start getting that lift already into the hair? Also making sure that my airflow is in control with the hair. So I want to make sure that as I'm blow drying this, the hair isn't going everywhere. Right, so I'm going to bring this in. Bring this up. Again, working from that base. So get that base, get that base. Making sure I get good amount of volume. As I start to blow dry, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to switch. Getting that hair all the way up. You see also how quick it starts to dry. See the amount of volume that we started to create already with this. I'm going to slightly move him a little bit to the side. You guys start to see this. Again, working that base, bringing this up, continuous movement. I don't want to make sure that, I do want to make sure that I don't burn my guest or scalp. So continuous movement with the blow dryer and the brush is going to help me with that. Again, having good control. I don't want to blow dry the hair like this. A lot of times when you're working with a finer fabric of hair, the hair starts to dry. What you get is a lot of frizz. I always want to be in good control of the end result of my guest. So just in this back area, you guys start to see just the amount of volume now that we were able to create with that. Okay, I'm going to start working through this back area. Blow drying this all the way. I'm going to move my friend. I'm going to get that base. Remember, it's all about that base, all about that base. Getting that hair nice and dry. But you see how I could still run my brush through it, that the hair didn't become crunchy or hard? That was utilizing my Grooming Spray from Maverick. One of my favorite products to use, especially for this kind of blow dry that I'm working with. I want the hair to still have a lot of movement into it. It gives me the volume. You're working with a guest that has a finer fabric of hair. Let's say they want the hair brushed back. It doesn't always have to be into a pompadour. It could be a normal style. This is going to be one of your best friends. So here, just blow drying this all back. I'm going to bring this forward. And as that starts to dry, I'm going to bring out a brush from a good friend, Nick. Nick Stenson gave me one of these. Love these brushes also for great volume. You get these at Ulta Beauty. So now I'm going to go through this front area. And what I love is the grip that I get through that brush. You see how easy it is now for me to have that good grip all the way through. Love this brush. Look at that. Look at the volume now. So we went from 5'8" to like 6'2" all of a sudden. Love this brush. The amount of tension that I'm able to put, but at the same time, you see how easy it is to go all the way through. That was my cameraman, he just sneezed. Don't worry about it, we're all contained. If you sneeze one more time, that's it. I'm gonna have to get somewhere else. You're only allowed to sneeze once in my house, that's it. So getting this all the way through. Again, just putting in a little bit of that volume. Love this brush. See how it has the bristles, the shorter, the longer. That helps a lot of times with that tension and also just to be able to move through it. So just that smaller bristles, longer bristles really help me put a lot of that tension and just work my way through that. So once I have this, I can feel that the hair is fairly dry. I'm going to make sure that I get a little bit more through the back. So we got that all the way blow dried up. If you desire to use a clipper and you were going to just slightly taper around his sideburn area, I'd have this just open blade first. Work this from short all the way into long. Yeah, you could do that. From that short into that longer length. Working that all the way up. Working from that opposite side, from short. Working that all the way up and out. So you disconnected the Facebook but it's gonna cut the video out.
Yeah, but no.
He's already cut it. It's fine. So just taper that slightly out. So now with this, you see just slightly tapering those sides. I'm gonna go into just a little bit more of that finish with this. So with this doll, through the back area, we could do the same. I'll go in here, just open. Just cleaning out around the hairline. Cleaning out that little bit. But if you notice, look at the silhouette, how it's blended all the way through the back. On a person, a lot of times, I'll keep the scissor over comb and I'll taper it all the way through. The doll head, just because of the positioning and the stitching, it works out just to be a little bit different. So just cleaning out this area. And then once I have this, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to use dry paste. So this one is also from Maverick. So using my dry paste, a little goes a long way. Educating your guests on how to properly apply that product is one of the most important things. A lot of times we give our guests a product, but we don't explain them how to utilize that product. So I'm going to put this in the palm of my hand. I'm going to emulsify some of it, just run some of it through my fingers. And I'm going to work from the back to the front. If you don't tell that to a guest, a lot of times they start at the front and there's too much product that's put into that. So I'm going to work that from the back. And then I'm going to start to work that all the way to the front. I'm going to use my fingers to maintain that separation. The palm of my hand, a lot of times I just use it to apply more product through my fingers. And then as I have that separation, I'll use the palm of my hand for any sleekness and control. And then just use my fingers for that added separation. So I'm going to go just through that front. I'm going to be able to shape that. I'm not worried about messing up the style because once you have a good blow dry, you don't really have to worry about that much. You see how we remove some of that weight through that front, how it started to benefit. Run my fingers through this, keeping that style. I like to also just use a little bit of hairspray sometimes to maintain that, so this stays strong. It's going to give me a little bit more of a firm hold. So I'll apply a little bit of that stay strong. Putting some of that separation. Bring this out. We'll bring this up. And again, just working a little bit of separation through that, bringing some of that top also up. Right, that you guys get to see here. Right, how this starts to look. So you see that connection all the way through the back, getting that all the way through that front area. Slightly disconnected, but at the same time it looks like it's connected. You see how we have a little bit of that longer top through it, so a little bit more of that pompadour kind of look. You could always create that separation, add in texture if you want, depending on the guest. Through this top area, if you saw, I went through the razor, but just through the inside just would help me create a little bit more of that lift through it. So here you guys could see like a finished result of what this looks like. If I were to go in to show you guys the sectioning that I took from this, so the sectioning was very simple and easy through this area. So what we did is, through this, I continued taking sections that went from back to front in this manner. Right? So if I was through here, we basically did this. Right? We had that section that we took from the side. Our next, so that's what we work with. And then from here, what we did is we extended those sections out in this manner. right? So this came all the way out, and then it just slightly curved with it as I was cutting. So if you saw like how my hands were slightly moving as I was cutting that. So these sections, right, were brought out this way. This was the elevation that was used. So when you see this, a lot of these sections, they were cut more in that manner, right? So these sections came out to here. Next one was here, and then we work our way down. So we basically work with a slightly higher elevation as we continue to work our way up. So that's the sectioning that we took from that, working our way. End result that you guys see, this is the end result of your doll head. I'll give it one spin so you guys could see what that looks like. So you see as we cut that all the way to the back, scissor over comb, work that way to the front. My little friend here, he's looking fresh. We're gonna make him look a little bit better. What do you guys think? He looks good, huh? So working with this, again, scissor over comb tips that I shared with you guys is making sure that when you're working with your scissor, you're just opening with that thumb. Continue to practice this. Different ways that you could practice is you could use a table, the edge of it, place your hand there, and that's going to help you control and not move the top of your hand while you create that dexterity. I think for some of us that are staying home and we're protecting ourselves from what's happening, it's a great opportunity for us to start to practice either just this movement. You don't even have to cut any hair. Another one is just grabbing that comb, flipping it down and moving that up, so that way it helps you when you're cutting hair. Comb up and then down for control. Comb up and then down for control. So that's one of the things that's going to help you. Let me get this little hair that's driving me crazy that stayed glued onto him. That we have. So again, this is a great method to be able to cut. This one we use, again, just when we want to taper and cut around that area. I use a longer scissor when I'm scissor over combing and a shorter scissor when I am working with a little bit more of detail work. So with that, I want to conclude this tutorial that I have for you guys. We're going to be sharing a lot more. So si ustedes hablan español, ya pronto vamos a hacer algunos videos más. But I want you guys to understand that we're going to keep this up on our YouTube channel, so make sure you share with your friends. I'm going to make it accessible to everyone, so we hope to see you soon. I'll be doing more tutorials, probably on a weekly basis as of now, so hope to see you all. Make sure that you connect and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also follow me on Instagram, Facebook. It's iLiKeToCutHair. No separations, no nothing. Remember, it's iLiKeToCutHair. See you later.